back, ladies and gentlemen, to the perfect 2016 World Team Table Tennis Championships in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. You're watching the men's finals here, and coming up, we've got Japan versus China. I'm Adam Babra, with me, Don Parker. How you doing, Don?
I'm doing well, Adam, looking to what I think will be a great final. I'm not sure about the voice level here. The crowd's going absolutely berserk. I think there's going to be a lot more support for the Chinese team. They're clearly the favourites. But here we have the Japanese team coming in first.
And it's definitely an exciting lineup. Looking at it first and coming out in order so far, Jun MIZUTANI will be playing the first match, followed by Maharu Yoshimura. And then Yuya Oshima, who's been playing the third spot, had a tough loss to England's Samuel Walker last night. Although Oshima definitely shown some strength, had a decent chance against Ma Long in 2015 at the China Open. And there is the Chinese national team, who's going to be led by XU Xin, the world ranked number 3, 26-year-old pen holder, cloud walker, and the most thrilling player to watch. Just gets everything back, and we'll see how it goes out here. He's definitely going to be facing a lot of pressure from his opponent, Jun MIZUTANI. The man of the year in 2015, the most unbeaten player on the planet, Ma Long, world ranked number 1, 27 years old, the dragon, the dictator, the man who took almost everything last year, and the most celebrated player in modern history on the men's side of the game. 4-time world champion, 2-time in singles, 2 times in teams, Olympic champion Jang Ji-ke. The crowd is definitely going to be going insane here if the women's matches earlier were any telling. They had to quiet them down. They were getting so rowdy in the middle of points even. Very exciting first half of the day. So we've got our head umpire from Sweden, Rebecca Bergfeldt. From the Netherlands, assistant umpire, Michael de Vries. So Don, it's been quite an interesting tournament. We've had 94 different countries involved. Champions Division, 24 teams. We had 87 men's teams. These are the only 2 left. England, as you saw last night, I know you were a big part of England. What was the experience like for you watching last night when Japan played England?
That was an incredible game. The English players came here with expectations of hopefully surviving in the top division. They came here, they lost the first 2 games that they played against great opposition. But then they put a run of wins together. They beat Germany. Now Germany were without Ovtcharov and Ball, but each of the 3 German players were ranked above the English players. They beat them. They had a great win against Poland. Then they reversed a defeat against France from the group in the quarter-final. And then last night against Japan, you watched the game, Adam. On ranking, it should have been a fairly comfortable victory for Japan. The English boys were outstanding. Liam Pickford, 4 match points against MIZUTANI, 9-6 up in the 5th against Yoshima. They had the chances, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Both of those matches that were played with Pittsburgh could have gone the other way. He had a strong advantage, and if he had taken both of his points, that would have been it with Samuel Walker's win. So it could have been a 3-1 victory the other way. I think this is very promising for the future of England to show that they are on the up and up, and that there is some strength coming in from the European side of the game. But right here, it's an all-out Asian battle. And Japan and China fought on the women's side. It was quite a struggle there, too, for some of the matches. Kasumi Ishikawa had 9-8 in Game 3 after being up 2-0 over Li Xiaoxia. And then there was just an edge ball, and Li Xiaoxia really turned it on in the backhand game. We'll see if the men can perform even better than the women as far as Japan goes to make this an exciting all-out battle. Of course, as you mentioned, China the strong favorites here. It's been a long, long time for China, since 2000, last time they lost, and it was actually here in Kuala Lumpur against Sweden. We saw Sweden face China earlier in the quarterfinals. Right there, the head coach, Liu Guoliang, Grand Slam winner, had a lot to say about Liu Guoliang. What are you thinking, Don?
I'm just thinking that I was here in it wasn't actually in this stadium, it was in the Putra Stadium at Bukit Jalil, and the turning point in that final when Sweden beat China, Sweden gambled and put the great Jan-Ove Valder on first against Liu Guoliang, and he had a very poor record in Valder. Liu Guoliang played it well. and Volner beat him. And then Persson chipped in with 2 incredible victories. And that's the last time that China have lost in this World Team Championship. I was also there in 1977 when the last time China played against Japan. And it was the old system, 3 men versus 3, but all play all, first team to 5, and China won 5-0. The interesting thing there, Adam, for people who follow the game, 10 players, 5 playing for Japan, 5 playing for China, 4 defensive players out of 10 when we were classed as defenders. There was Liang Koliang, Wang Liang, Liu Yuanshang for China, and the great Takashima for Japan. Whereas you look at the play today, we've seen 2 defensive players in the whole tournament on the male side.
Right, it does seem that defensive players have a difficult time taking down the world top players, at least on the men's side, as you mentioned. Even teams that have very strong defenders, like Japan. I mean, you've got Yuto Muramatsu. Shiono had a good run for a while, still excellent to watch. He's actually come closer to beating some of the Chinese men and some of the other players from Japan. I know he's had a close match or 2 with Zhang Jike, played some really tough ones. But that's right, they do seem to avoid putting the choppers into play.
I ran into Mahara, who is now the General Secretary of the Japanese Table Tennis Association, after the ladies' match. And I asked him about the match in 1977. And of course, he played in that match and lost 2 singles. So he was laughing about that and hoping that his players here could do a little bit better than he did.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of time. You and I have both seen what it's like for the players after they have some really difficult losses between Gozi and Pitchford. You know, it's character building. You stay with the game, you stay in the sport, and you come back stronger. And while people tend not to remember second place, in the really close matches, sometimes people remember who caused the greatest threat to seemingly unbeatable opponents. And speaking of which, Japan will be trying to do everything they can. If you haven't seen the promotional video on the Facebook page for ITTF, or the official YouTube channel for ITTF, there's an incredible video showing these 2 teams facing off. It gives me chills just to watch it, and I think the crowd's cheers will be doing just the same out here, Don.
Well, certainly already the Chinese supporters making a lot of noise. As you say, I hope they keep the noise down during the rallies. Great to hear them explode in between.
I'm not sure how I feel. I just love him screaming all the time.
MIZUTANI went for the top spin down the line. Zhu Xin will do this, won't he? He will go around the backhand side of the table. And we didn't see how often MIZUTANI gets wide to his forehand.
So far, the spin has just been too much. Even on the first shot, he had the opening down the short side of the table. It was an all-or-nothing attempt. And MIZUTANI is going to have to dial in. Just thunderous gyos from the crowd cheering for Xu Xin.
Again, he's very strong, is Xu Xin. Steps away from the table, but plays with so much power.
We see some effort here from MIZUTANI, this time trying to cover a little bit more, but overcompensating. Now if he can just split the difference, soon hopefully some shots down the line, short side of the table, but first just getting them on. First miss from Xu Xin we've had yet. The touch game of MIZUTANI earned the point.
Worth pointing out, MIZUTANI's played 9 games in this tournament. He's 8-1, just lost the 1 game against Portugal, against Montero. So he's in good shape. Won 2 in the semi-final against England, 2 in the quarter-final against Hong Kong.
That being said, on the other side of the table, an even better record. Xu Xin hasn't lost a match yet. Xu Xin, one of the most unbeatable players as far as foreigners go. Out of the 3 people they sent to the table, Fan Zhendong is not one of them for China. It's a test of experience. 26, 27, and 28-year-olds on the team. There we go, he gets the counter, times it right, and plays it out to the forehand. MIZUTANI is going to have to stay in close to the table to execute these shots.
It's interesting, you play against somebody like XU Xin, who's got an incredible forehand, but ironically the tactics are to get out wide to his forehand and then try and make him play backhands from the backhand side. You play too much into the backhand, he'll anticipate, he'll run round, and he's almost unplayable with his forehand from the backhand side.
From here it looked like that needed a little bit more pace. MIZUTANI going for the spin shot, just arcing it up and over. And the point that he got with that counter forehand was actually off XU Xin's backhand opening, interestingly enough. And it's just overpowered right now. Had a good opening, the opportunity, but as soon as XU Xin got his loop in, it's MIZUTANI who was chasing it to stay in the point. That first shot was well placed right on the body too. XU Xin covering well. It's interesting to see the development of pen holders over the years, from Liu Guoliang, sort of retiring, the pips out, same side of the racket style, developing the backhand.
Strong top spin from XU Xin. As you say, Adam, I think this brought a new dimension for the pen holders. I think they were almost a dying breed at one time. And then all of a sudden, I think it was Liu Guoliang, really, the first player on the world scene, used both sides of the racket. Previously unknown for a pen holder. And now we have players like XU Xin, we have Marlin. Absolute top ranked players in the world playing with the pen holder.
Something, get his arm to fall off. If his shoulder comes loose, maybe he'll have a chance. A few more points like this, sacrifice game one. Incredible fishing from MIZUTANI, but still patient, consistent forehand loops. XU Xin even trying on one of them to slow it down, but look how fast his arm is going over the ball on those shots.
And the interesting thing there, Adam, XU Xin will be keeping his eye on MIZUTANI, watching for him to step round to play the forehand. Then he would have gone out wide to his forehand. But both of them almost like stalemate.
Yes. There we go. That's the most over-the-table backhand we've seen from MIZUTANI yet.
4-7.
Talking about the pen hold style, there was actually a meeting held around 1991, I believe, in China, discussing if they should completely outlaw the pen hold style. So while it still is a rare breed, it's still alive and well in XU Xin and Wang Chunting.
Liu Guoliang's on his feet, punching the air. Of course, he'll have memories of the year 2000, when just down the road they lost to Sweden 3-2.
Now, a lot of the blowouts in the first game of a match have turned around drastically when the player comes back after talking to the coach. Head coach of the Japanese team, Yosuke Kudashima, in the corner. Hopefully they'll be inspiring MIZUTANI with some strategic advice.
We spoke yesterday, Adam, about the pen hold grip and how loose it is in the hand. And I really do think that XU Xin capitalizes on that with his serve. Fast accelerating back there, underneath the ball, heavy backspin.
Yeah, he definitely has more spin than most people have ever faced in their life.
5-9.
From serves to loops, it's about everything. We also talked about how he's less confident, XU Xin, in the backhand. So he got very strong at running around, stepping around the backhand corner.
Read the length of the serve superbly, XU Xin. Slightly long, he let it come over the baseline. Played a good topspin, and it sets him up with 5 game points.
That's an excellent shot. Reverse pendulum serve, the follow-up backhand down the line. It's the first time I've seen this serve out of MIZUTANI, and look where he has to hit it to get it out of reach. You can see from the wince, XU Xin, that every point counts. Doesn't want to leave any question in the mind of the coaches that he's ready to play the Olympics and win this World Championships. As fast as they come, no spin into the body. XU Xin takes game one, 11 points to 6. And we'll be back for game two in just after this short break. Players are coming back for game two. XU Xin on screen, leading 1-0 over Jun MIZUTANI of Japan. Just for the record, if you have any questions, you can send them to us on Twitter at ITTF World, hashtag Ask the Commentator. Happy to talk to you about your questions. An outstanding effort, but just not enough. XU Xin runs it down and keeps it in play after the full commitment loop from MIZUTANI.
Just trying to think what I would have said to MIZUTANI had I been the coach. I've coached the England team 7 or 8 World Championships. It's so difficult. He has to stay close to the table. He has to try and take the initiative. A little bit unfortunate there with the edge ball. But that's a little bit early into MIZUTANI's game. He likes to drift away from the table. And against anybody other than the Chinese, he's in there with a massive chance. He's the master at that distance. But it worries me against the Chinese. They've got so much power. They just go through it.
Yeah, power, consistency, angular play. I mean, really well-rounded players, especially if you give them time. Surprisingly, he leaves the ball shallow on the table in the fishing game. He's about 50-50 from off the table right now, at least remembering the 2 points where he was way back. Cover shot there with the racket head straight up. XU Xin softens up a little bit. It's rare because XU Xin is also a master of touch and control. One of the greatest showmen, probably the showman of the game right now. And smokes him down the line. Sees MIZUTANI turning, puts his finger up, not sure why.
I think out of respect. XU Xin saw him stepping round to play his forehand from the backhand side. Not a bad sign. It shows MIZUTANI's looking to be aggressive, but he went a little bit early there.
Here's another interpretation. Maybe it was the wagging of the finger, like, don't try that. Don't try to step around and take that forehand on me.
I think if I was up against XU Xin, I wouldn't wag my finger at him. I wouldn't want to upset him.
Well, it was XU Xin who wagged the finger.
Ah, okay.
XU Xin's definitely got some flair and style in his play. The last World Championships pointed to his back. World #1 at the time. Incredible toss when he shook his head again. No, it might have actually been 2 years ago that he pointed at his back in Tokyo, the last team championships. Gotta love the reaction here. Look at that stare. MIZUTANI just really, as fast as he is, this is a whole different level of speed out here. He's having trouble keeping up. This is the most expressive I've seen XU Xin, and I've seen him play a lot. He is an expressive person, but right now he's really just, I'd say, enjoying the experience, but also you can see he's putting some pressure on himself to win by the greatest margin possible.
Just feel he's just got a little bit too much power here from MIZUTANI. Interesting to see when China played against Korea. Korea didn't play Jo Si-hook, who was in tremendous form, the defender, quite simply because all 5 of the Chinese squad are so powerful, which go through his defense. Nobody else in the world can do that.
Shot doesn't even hit the hand, it hits him straight in the body. We're going to have a clock on this. I heard that they're developing some technology to read the speed of the ball on every point. That shot right there has got to be clocked in as one of the fastest shots. I don't know, we've got some hard hitters out there, but to hit MIZUTANI in the stomach while he's off the table, my goodness. We've got a question here. This is from Tweet TT Daily, from Table Tennis Daily. Dan Ives, the question is, do you think this China team will be the Olympic Rio team? That's a good question. I think if Zhang Jiko wins his match here, it's very possible it will be. If he loses his match here, that could be the cutting grounds.
Yeah, it is a very interesting question. Obviously, Fan Shendong is the player who's coming through number 2 in the world. They're playing here with 1, 3, and 4 in the world. You leave out Zhang Jiko, the Olympic champion, bring in Fan Shendong. Great question.
Time will tell, right? Tough to know. Yeah, the hook on the ball, the speed on the ball. Look at Xu Xin. So much swag in his step.
It's almost as though he's impressing that I'm the boss out here.
Right, I think he wants to leave no question. Excellent opening shot. MIZUTANI again has to hit the exact line. This time Xu Xin gets a racket on it. Just can't curve it back on. I think that's something, you know, we always talk about the underdog playing more risky and just doing your best to focus and try to make the low percentage shots as high a percentage of the time as you can. I think the element of surprise is going to be crucial for MIZUTANI. And that's it. Assertive play right off the bounce.
Long fast push out wide. Xu Xin's forehand. The next ball I would have recommended had he needed to play. Force Xu Xin to play backhands from the backhand side.
Watching carefully right there was Liu Shiwen, newly crowned world champion on the women's side with the rest of her teammates as China took the women's. You know, I was just thinking about that serve and wondering if Xu Xin would be able to run around it. The pressure to keep it so wide and so deep, MIZUTANI misses the table. That's the most power I've seen from MIZUTANI. The counter, he's really charged up and getting ready to anticipate the counter shot here. Liu Goliang sees a bit of a problem forming. Timeout called on Xu Xin's side. Ooh, look at that look.
I think what we're seeing is Jun MIZUTANI is staying a little bit close to the table. He is getting out wide Xu Xin's forehand. A couple of points. Maybe Liu Goliang a little worried. Wants to break the momentum, albeit it's a very 2-point run. Nevertheless,
I think MIZUTANI, every shot is going to have to be looking sort of 2 shots in advance. He's going to have to make 1 shot and be preparing for the next aggressively. The long pushes, the deep serves, if he plays a touch shot, a flip, he has to be ready to quickly attack after.
the period that I was coaching the England team, we didn't have timeouts. I really find it interesting how the coaches use timeout. Liu Goliang has made some great goals. Of course, you may use it for tactical reasons, you may use it to break momentum, you may use it in pivotal points where you feel a game can be won and lost. And over the years, I do feel he's done an amazing job tactically with the opportunities that timeouts create.
Well, a timeout is a timeout for both players, so even though it was called by Liu Guoliang, Jun MIZUTANI has a chance to get some words of wisdom from his corner as well. So we'll see who's more affected by the timeout here. Interesting, so far the pressure seems to have changed and built up on XU Xin. Sometimes talking to the boss reminds you that there's more pressure out there. And I don't know if it was you saying it, that Liu Guoliang as a pen holder is a little bit tougher on XU Xin, maybe because he doesn't seem to be quite as hard working at practice as a few of the others. Those are the combinations, the soft shot followed by the counter, and even though he played it so wide to the forehand, the Cloudwalker was right there to loop it back. Finally though, MIZUTANI outlasted the counter looping rally. Yeah, the timing's completely different. That first forehand loop he took was off the bounce early. It's uncomfortable for MIZUTANI because usually you can beat a lot of players fishing, taking a little more time on the ball, but not out here. He has to press his comfort zone a little bit forward. XU Xin finding the forehand, the last moment. If he had given any sign, MIZUTANI would have run it down, but deceptive shot, just an inch away from being returned off the racket.
It's amazing how during a rally, you focus on the ball and keeping your eye on the ball, but now you've got to keep your eye on your opponent as well. It's another dimension when the rally develops like the rally we've just seen.
That's right, especially when someone's off the table and fishing like that. You really are looking for the opportunity. And it's always part of the peripheral vision there, seeing the opponent. Someone moves out of position. You know, the point before that was to take the lead for XU Xin. MIZUTANI was tied up at 8-all. But now it's 2 game points for XU Xin after the timeout to step into a 2-0 lead. Look at the facial expressions. I mean, XU Xin just looks like a different person out here. I think his pressure is really thick. And sometimes having all this support in the crowd adds to it. It's like China is here. He doesn't want to let them down in this arena. All that power, and he looks them in the eye right after the stare down and an 11-8 victory. 2-0, XU Xin will be back for game 3 right after this. As the players come back for game 3, XU Xin is leading 2-0 over Jun MIZUTANI in the black and pink, representing Japan. We saw on a few points as the last game was closer than the one before, and at 8-8, Jun MIZUTANI seemed to be in it after the timeout was called for XU Xin. The off-the-bounce play, really a whole combination of shots in a row to earn a few points. Excellent shot from below the table, keeps it low to the net and loaded with spin. Don, now might be a good time. We've got some questions here from Twitter. This is from TTAction.de. It says, Adam, what is your favorite player in today's final? Well, I think he's serving right now. XU Xin, just incredible to watch. And normally he's the most creative player, but right now I just think there's too much pressure on him to win, to get fancy, to be off the table lobbing or hitting chops or around the net shots.
I also think what's interesting is when the Chinese team are looking and discussing the tactics of this match, to get the order right is important. It's important for any coach. And I think it was fairly predictable that MIZUTANI would play first game on ABC. So he plays what we would say the quick four. He would play the fourth game. So I think they've picked Xu Xin to take out the Japanese #1 player. Bit of pressure. He's ranked 7th in the world, MIZUTANI. Xu Xin #3. But this is the one game that would hurt the Japanese, their #1 player going down. So I agree, very exciting player to watch, and he's been given a lot of responsibility by Liu Duliang here.
Right, I think the real question everybody wants to know is, what would it take to beat the Chinese team? And that's the million-dollar question. But I do think that winning the first match is almost the only chance, really, to sort of put a dent in their confidence early on and make them play nervous. But Xu Xin has an impeccable record against Jun MIZUTANI. Out of 9 encounters on the World Tour, he hasn't lost a single match yet. And that was from the baseline of the table. Xu Xin, you could see in some of those highlights between the game, his full arm extension really takes a lot of strength, puts a lot of tension on the shoulder. That one wasn't even as big of a stroke, but he still had so much power.
I think that sums it up well, Adam, that he's just got too much power for MIZUTANI. MIZUTANI had a spell in the second game when he came back and he managed to get back to 8-6 down, timeout call, levelled it at 8-all. He took some good balls off the bounce. He got out wide, Xu Xin's forehand, angled it then into the backhand, forced him to play backhands. But it's so difficult to keep that going.
That's one way to do it, deep into the backhand corner. I was just thinking about what you had mentioned earlier, playing wide with the forehand and then hitting it behind him to force him into a few backhand shots. The thing is with Xu Xin, he's also so comfortable fishing using the traditional pen-hold backhand. Sometimes he can just keep it on the table and get himself back at the point. That's the shot. I think that's what you need to make him do, take a few reverse pen-hold backhands. He's going to win points half of the time with it, but he's going to miss a lot more than he will with his forehand. It seemed like between the cheering and the flash photography, Xu Xin had to take a moment here. Make sure he was focused. The second time we've seen a fast long serve from Xu Xin, and I mean really the execution is textbook perfect. Deep into the backhand and right at the baseline of the table.
It almost hits the baseline on your side of the table as well. Perfect execution of the long fast serve from Xu Xin.
Serve drifts a little bit long, but still a recovery shot. It'll break off the top of the net, 2 bounces. That's just a perfect camera shot too. I mean, he's on the run, out wide to the forehand side. This is something we say about Ma Long and most of the top Chinese players, but even on the run, if they can reach the ball, they can loop the ball. It's like there's no other option but to loop, unless you're playing a short shot.
Again, an error with the reverse side of his racket, the reverse backhand top spin.
We know he lacks confidence with it. I mean, it's an outstanding shot by most people's standards, but it's the most inconsistent shot that Xu Xin has. Just get him to take that, the percentages are going to go up. This time right into the body. What can you do, really?
Just awesome, isn't it? A long push. MIZUTANI spins up with the backhand. You invite your opponent to top spin and then you just take it off the bounce. And he does it so well.
This might sound like a funny thing to say, but a lot of the women players keep their rackets really high for the short strokes and just reaction time. I think MIZUTANI is going to have to keep his racket head up just a little bit to keep up with XU Xin. Sort of a shorter stroke, not as much backswing. Just has to be careful not to become too passive of a blocker.
Again, MIZUTANI's tactics were good. He didn't quite have the angle to get wide. You see, this is more down the line. He can't get it, but that's just a fantastic topspin, as you mentioned, Adam. He's perhaps leaning back a little bit, but if they can get the bat on the ball, they can play with power. Don't ask me how. I guess it's something to do with the hours that they practice and the coaches that they have working with them, but it's outstanding table tennis.
The Bruce Lee 1-inch punch. Some physical conditioning out here adding to that threat. And every time the ball comes back, it just seems a little bit slower and gives XU Xin the time to rip through it. There's Ma-Long getting ready for the next match in the second spot.
Watch the return of serve from MIZUTANI. It's a great return of serve.
Yeah, the next ball, though, he's too far back off the table, and XU Xin's right back in the rally. Timeout called for MIZUTANI. You know, when we were talking about how XU Xin is just overpowering MIZUTANI, the score has been quite tight. I mean, we were at 6-6 and then 2 points now for XU Xin, but they've been going back and forth. We have to remember that if one player gets to 11, 2-point lead, even if it's just because XU Xin is taking a few backhands and missing, or you've got a net ball here and there, however the points are won, that's all it really is. XU wins 3 games first.
I agree. I think the reason it's a little bit tighter than is the errors that XU Xin has been making with the backhand. They probably make 2 mistakes every game, which has given MIZUTANI a little bit of a chance. But as you say, he needs a little bit of luck, or he needs to play some big shots off the bat, get the angles right.
Some of us were discussing that earlier when Kasumi Ishikawa was playing Li Xiaoshan to beat the top Chinese players. You need to be in top form, have a little bit of luck on your side as well. So we'll see. But for MIZUTANI, if he keeps getting XU Xin to play that backhand shot, it might be a quiet victory in this game, but I think that's his best chance. Take it, but it was early on over the table. You can see MIZUTANI fighting to try and stay in, but he still naturally feels the need to back off the table because XU Xin will hit him in the shirt.
It's also his natural instinct, isn't it, MIZUTANI? He's comfortable a metre and a half away from the table, but unfortunately, tactically, it just does not work against XU Xin.
Serve drift's a little bit long, right idea though. Very patient and good eye from XU Xin to recognize it's coming off, and now we've got 4 match points for the Cloud Walker, world rank number 3, XU Xin. And Wu Xuan watching again to see if the men will join the women of China to get the flag hanging at the highest points. Just by the breathing of XU Xin, I have a funny feeling if he wins this point, we're going to see an emotional reaction here. A little bit of a celebration. Oh, a little bit early. Instead of moving forward, he starts to swing early. A strong receive from MIZUTANI. Hasn't been strong enough usually to force third contact on the third ball. I think XU Xin's a little bit in his head right now. This is the problem when people start to see the victory before they've gotten there. Got to play the points. Again, really just zeroing in, staying on top of it. XU Xin strong from the backhand corner, but because it was deep enough, MIZUTANI could see where it was going, anticipate, and block it out to the forehand side.
That was 2 points against the XU Xin service as well. So MIZUTANI now with the service. Got to make sure it doesn't drift long. Maybe the long fast serve. Brave if he does it, but it needs to be long and fast. Personally, I'll be keeping it tight and looking to get in first, stay close to the table, make the first strong top spin.
And that's it, Xu Xin has done it. Number one, he says. China number one, Xu Xin takes care of the number one spot. 3 straight games over Jun MIZUTANI to keep his flawless record. Now 10 matches at 0 over Jun MIZUTANI. And we'll see how elements of surprise come in with some of the younger Japanese players, because Maharu Yoshimura, who many have said is one of the greatest threats, I think it was the Chinese team who said Maharu Yoshimura, the greatest threat to the Chinese national team. He's going to be coming up next against Ma Long. Stay right here. The second match coming up shortly.